Hi there, Mark here again. Welcome to this, which is part 2 of my build guide for the Tamiya Agriois TXT-2 chassis monster truck. And we got to step 9 last time, which is up to this point. So we've got kind of the main chassis put together with the gearbox and the motors in between. So time to get on with it. So on to step 10, which is attaching the drive bevel, it says, but I think there's a bit more going on again as usual than it just mentions at the top there. But for this part now, from now on, we're going to be using parts bag C, so get that thing opened. And again, I've laid out my parts down the side, matching up with the diagram. Again, be careful, you've got a couple of 1160s you can need for each of these parts, and some 1150s, and I think there's one little 850 in there as well. So what we're going to do now is eventually get to this point, which is building up one of the axles. Now, both the axles, front and rear, are exactly the same. So, as I said, this is what it's going to look like when it's done. Both front and rear are capable of steering, so they'll both be like this. So yeah, let's get on with this then. First of all, you're going to need this little bevel gear shaft, which is a BC15, and we need to put onto that BC19, which is the 18-tooth bevel gear. Now, there are 2 bevel gears that you need in this. And this is the bigger one, the 18-tooth, and you can see it's got a kind of lip or an extension that sticks out of it, which the other one doesn't have quite so much of, so that's the easy way to tell the difference. And it is slightly the bigger of the 2. So we put that onto the splines, and what we need to do then is get an 1150 bearing, and then we need to hold that in place with one of the 4mm E-clips or C-clips or E-rings or whatever you want to call them. So just snap that into place. Then you need this part, which is your drive gear, and it needs to go on this way round, like so. And then it's another 1150 bearing that just goes over there. If you're using the bushings, don't forget you're going to need to put some grease on there, but I've got the bearings, so yeah, if you see in yours you've got the bushing, so make sure you put grease on. And there's that little 850 that goes on the other end. So that's what it calls part A. For the part that it calls part B, we're going to need this BC14, this bar here. You need to put a 4mm E-clip on there, so what I'm going to do is use the bench, a little tip there, just press it down, and yeah, it's an easy way to get it on without it flying across the room. Then you need your 15-tooth bevel gear, and the splines will locate, and yeah, that won't turn there. Then you need 2 1160 bearings, and they're going to go on this side, held in place with another 4mm E-clip, like so. You can just see that there. And to finish this, you just need an 1150 bearing or bushing, and goes on the other end. So that's what it calls part B. Now we're going to put these into B1, which is one part of the axle housing, or it says the differential housing, which is this part, B1. We get part A, it fits in like so, make sure it spins around okay. Then we get part B, which is where the drive is going to attach to, or the prop joint, or the prop shaft, I think. And that just sits in there like there and meshes up with the other part. And so we just need to get some grease on these bits. So then you need plastic part B4, which is this piece, and then you need to put in your 2 ball joints, which are 6mm chrome ball joints like this. Just screw those into the positions, as you can see, and simply place that over the gears, and we need to hold that in place with 6 of the 3x15 tapping screws, like so. So I'll just get those done up and on to step 11. So step 11 is making up the differential gear, and as you can see there's lots of grease got to be applied to all these parts, but I'll just show you how the parts go together so I don't get all covered in grease, and then I'll put my grease in afterwards. So first thing you need is this part, which is your BC16, which this is the ring gear. You need that little shim, which is a 9mm washer, goes in. Then you need one of your bevel gears, and that just fits in like that. get your star shaft, put on your small bevel gears or planetary gears, whatever you like to call them. Like so. Just drop that into the case with the star shaft going into the 3 holes. Then it's a case of the other bevel gear goes on the top. Make sure that's all meshing up okay. Your second 9mm washer goes on the top of that. And then your differential cover. It should all clip together quite nicely. And then simply secure that with these 3 tiny little 2x5 cap screws. Make sure to put some thread lock onto those. So with that differential finished, we're on to step 12, which is preparing the drive shafts. So you've got these two, there's a long one and a short one. And as you can see, I've already put the larger 5mm E-rings or E-clips onto the end where you've got the drive for the dog bones. Okay, so they're both the same pretty much. You need one of the small 6mm washers, pop that on, and then a 1260 bearing or bushing. Then you need another 1260 bearing followed by a 6mm washer and another 5mm E-clip goes on there. And the same for the other drive shaft. So they're ready to go for step 13. For which you're going to need plastic part B2, which is the lower differential gearbox, it says. Just make sure you get the alignment right. There's this kind of tab here. Make sure you get that right, so it's pointing downwards as you look at it now. And we're going to get the parts and put them in. So you need your differential, then get the short drive shaft and pop it in there. A bit of grease on, as you can see. Then pop the long drive shaft into the other end, like so. And then we need to get these bearings lined up into this housing, like so. Okay, so step 14 is simply putting those 2 halves we've just prepared together to form one of the axles. So yeah, make sure you get it the right way around again and simply put them together. Now for this we're going to need 2 of the 3x25 screws and 6 of the 3x20s and obviously 8 of your ordinary nuts, your 3mm nuts. So the only thing really to look out for here is the 25mm long ones need to go in these holes here. Okay, 20mm in the rest. So I'll just put it all together and show you what it looks like. So here it is. So you've got your screws in there, there, one in there, one in there, and 2 on this end. And obviously they're held in by these captive nuts. Hope you can see that in this light. So yeah, all done up like that. Don't forget to put your thread lock on, and on step 15, which is attaching the axle guard. So you're going to need these parts for E4. There's 2 of them and they're going to end up something like this. This is the one side, so you can see the ball joints on the top there, and there's one underneath at the bottom. So you kind of make them opposite, if you know what I mean. So I'll just show you how to do this one, which is the A side, part A there. This one on here is B. Simply a case of these black ball joints, the 5mm ones, they go in the top. Like so. I'll just get those done up. Once you've done that, you want to get your chrome 6mm ball joint, and that goes in that bottom hole there. And you do have to screw this all the way through the plastic and then fix a flange nut on the other end when it comes out the side there, like so. So once you've done that, you need your 2 50mm long screws, and we're going to pop this onto the axle housing. So pop your screws in from underneath. And then fix those on with the lock nuts, the 3mm lock nuts. So yeah, once you've got that on, you just do exactly the same but the opposite for the other side, and it should end up looking something like this. Step 16 is making up the uprights, so you need these parts D1 and D2. I've already done the part here, which is part B, which is D1. They are marked, I don't know if you can see that on there in this light, but they're marked D1 and D2, so you can't get them mixed up. So just make sure you follow the orientation of the diagram. This is D1, so it's that way around, and the only difference between the two really is this 6mm ball joint here. It is attached, goes in from the top, and it's attached by a lock nut, and the other side, as you'll see, there's 2 ball joints on that one, so we'll just get that made up. It is the same as I said. So the best thing to do is get it lined up so it's in the same kind of orientation as in the diagram, like that. And so you want to get that ball joint, so your 6mm ball joint with the thread on it goes from underneath, and it's going to screw into this ball joint that hasn't got the thread on it. Well, it's got the thread on the inside, I should say. So we just get that done up, and that ball joint on the top is captive in that plastic housing, so you could just tighten that up against the top one. Don't forget your thread lock. So once that's done, you get your 1260 bearings. You've got one that goes in each side. A nice tight fit. Then get your wheel axle. Then you need a 6mm washer, just to protect that bearing, I think. And then you need a 5mm E-clip, just to hold that axle in place. Okay, so that's it for your 2 uprights. And the last thing in this step is to make up this tie rod, this steering tie rod. Basically you just get parts F9, one on each end, and screw them onto this 118mm bar and match it up with the diagram. On to step 17, which is attaching those uprights we've just made onto the axle. All you're going to need is 4 step screws and 4 of the 4mm washers and the tie rod that you made earlier. Okay, so yeah, both sides are exactly the same again. So once you've done the one, it's the same in the opposite for the other side. We just need to put a 4mm washer onto there. This left hand side is part A, which was your D2 part. So you need the washer in the top, washer in the bottom. Bit tricky really, this one. And then we've got to get it into that C cup. You've got to get that dog bow to line up with your axle. So yeah, once that's in place, we can then get those step screws, which is gonna be how it's gonna steer. It's gonna pivot on these for the steering. So one in the top and one in the bottom. Okay, so as I said, it's exactly the same for both sides, and a word of warning, these are really hard to get done up. They're really tight, so yeah, you need a bit of pressure on those. But yeah, so once those are done, it does show here to put some grease on these parts on the end of the dog bones, but because I'm going to be using this off-road in the dirt and dust, and the grease attracts the dirt and makes a grinding paste, what I recommend is you use something like this, which is dry lubricant. This is a PTFE spray, and you just get it in there, spray it in, and I think that's a good substitution for grease. And to finish this step, get your tie rod, just poke it through so it goes through the guards there, and just pop those ball joints on. And that's the end of step 17. So now it's time to open parts bag D. Step 18 is making the 4 upper arms, which look like this. There's the 3 of them. These are a piece of cake. Basically you need this bar Make sure you get the right one and measure it, because it's one of two lengths. This is 111mm long, so you need 4 of those. You need this part here, which is BD2, which is like a long grub screw, and then you need these parts F8, and in total you're going to need 8 of these. So we'll screw that into there. You get an Allen key provided that fits, so screw that in until the end sticks out 11mm like this one. Once you've done that, put a bit of thread lock on the end of those metal parts and simply screw it into the bar. Obviously one in each end. And then all you got to do is make sure that you get the orientation of the ends right. So one is flat like that and the other one is pointing upwards. So you can just match that up with the diagram. Step 19, and time to zoom out again because we need to get the chassis involved now. So this step is just attaching those upper arms to the diff case. As you can see, just pop them onto those 2 ball joints on the top there, and then we're going to turn this over and fit it to the front of the chassis. So this is the end with the motors like that, and then we just got to pop these onto those ball joints. There, which are the upper ball joints on the chassis. A good push, and that is as simple as that for that step. And on to step 20, which is making up the lower arms. Now this is exactly the same as making the upper arms, except for using these shorter shafts, which are the 99mm shafts. And the other difference is that the ball ends, I hope you can see, they're in line with each other. So the others were kind of 90 degrees apart, and these, as you can see, are in line. So just make up 4 as you did for the other arms. So the other part it shows to make up in step 20 is the prop shafts. Obviously there's 2 of these. The prop joints, it's called. So you've got this, the universal joint there, and your propeller joint, and there's a flat on that end. And if you get the end of the UV joint with 1 hole in it, and that's going to go onto that flat there, and we're just going to hold that in place with your tiny little BD1 grub screw, and obviously you need some thread lock on that, and just make sure that you screw that up onto the flat part of the shaft. Obviously make 2 of these up. So for step 21 you're going to need 2 of those arms you've just made, and we're going to attach those to the axle we've just put on. I think I'm going to need my pliers for this, so these go on these front mounts, the front ball joints. And before you fit the other ends onto the chassis there, we need to get the prop shaft fitted. So the longer end goes towards the motor, and we're going to fit it. What I've done is I've screwed in the grub screws, 1 in each side on both ends, just to make it a bit easier to get it installed. So I'm going to put the gearbox end on first, and we're going to try and line these grub screws up with the holes in the output shaft there. So yeah, I think this pushes right up against the bearing. I hope you can see in there. And I'll get this one nipped up, and then using the prop shaft to just turn that round. I'll do up the other side. Okay, so it's the same thing really for the other end. Just pop that on, try and line it up with the holes, and nip up the grub screw on the one side, and then turn it over and do the grub screw on the other side. Okay, and all we need to do to finish this step is to pop the 2 lower arms onto these ball joints. Okay, I think that's that step done. There's both axles fitted, so that's the end of that step, and this is starting to look a bit more like a chassis now, isn't it? I must say the quality of this thing really shines through. It's really well made, well engineered. There's virtually no slop in this design whatsoever, so yeah, it's all coming together quite well. I think this one's gone on long enough again, so I'm going to call a halt to this part of the build guide, And all I can say is thanks for following along. Hope you enjoyed this and got something out of it, and hopefully you'll join me on part 3. Cheers, bye.